Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's debate. My name is Sophie Lim and I'm the chairman, and Manny Benepal is the timekeeper. The debate will be judged by a panel of 3 adjudicators who are Miss France, Miss Boyd Turner and Miss Bra. The topic of this debate is that Cathy Miller, Cathy the Baker, should be able to choose who she serves. The affirmative team seated to my right is from Concordia College and the negative team seated to my left is from Adelaide High School. The speaking time for this debate is 6 minutes with a double bell at the end of your speaking time. A warning bell will ring once at 5 minutes, and a continuous bell will ring 30 seconds after the final bell. Please switch off your mobile phones and other electronic devices. I declare this debate now open. I call upon the first affirmative speaker, Oliver Hawkins.
Good evening, Chairperson, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for our debate is that Cathy Miller, Cathy the Baker, should be able to choose who she serves. Cathy Miller, also known as Cathy the Baker, is the devout Christian owner of the Tastries Bakery, located in California, in the United States. In 2017, she made headlines when she refused to design a custom wedding cake for a same-sex couple, citing her religious beliefs. This sparked widespread controversy and a legal battle still going on today. We define the phrase, be able to choose, as having the ability or authority to make a decision between 2 or more options, and we define to serve as the action of providing a service which can be goods or duties, and in this case, in exchange for money. So, we define the topic as Cathy Miller having the authority or ability to decide who she will offer her services to. We, the affirmative team, wholeheartedly believe that this statement is true. Today, as first speaker, I will be talking to you about how Cathy has freedom of religion, freedom of choice, and freedom of expression. Our second speaker will discuss how her intent was not to harm the couple and that she shouldn't be the exception when others like her have been able to choose who they serve. Our third speaker will rebut and sum up her case. I'm going to discuss 3 main points. My first point is that Cathy Miller should be able to choose who she serves because she has freedom of religion. This is because religious freedom is one of the most fundamental rights recognised in democratic societies. In fact, the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, where Cathy lives and operates, explicitly protects every citizen's right to freely exercise their religion. According to the Pew Research Center in 2019, over 70% of Americans consider religious freedom to be an essential part of their identity as citizens. For Cathy Miller, her faith is not something separate from her business. It informs her daily decisions. In a CBS News report on the Tastries Bakery case, Cathy herself explained that she was not refusing people out of malice, but rather out of a sincere desire to remain true to her Christian beliefs. Legal experts, such as those cited in the National Law Journal, have argued that forcing someone to provide services that directly contradict their faith could be seen as government overreach and a violation of the Free Exercise Clause. So, Cathy's decision isn't about discrimination, but about protecting her deeply held religious convictions. Now to my second point. Cathy Miller should be able to choose who she serves because she has freedom of choice. As the owner of a private business, Cathy should have the same rights as any other citizen to make decisions about how her property, time, and skills are used. According to Professor Eugene Volokh of UCLA Law School, private businesses are not merely public utilities. They are still owned by individuals who have rights over their labour and expression. A 2021 Gallup poll found that 61% of Americans believe small business owners should be allowed to refuse services in cases where providing them conflicts with personal belief. Moreover, Cathy's Bakery is not the only option available. Customers in her area have multiple alternative bakeries, as noted in local coverage by the Bakersfield Californian. In fact, when politely declining service to the couple, Cathy even recommended them a baker who could make their wedding cake. This shows that Cathy's choice does not prevent people from accessing services, but it does allow her to maintain integrity and autonomy. Freedom of choice is about recognising that Cathy is not just a baker, but a person with rights. Rights that should not be stripped away simply because she owns a business. My third and final point is that Cathy Miller should be able to choose who she serves because of her freedom of expression. Baking and decorating cakes is not a simple mechanical task. It is an art form, a personal craft, and often a reflection of the baker's creativity and individuality. Every custom cake involves design choices, colours, themes, and decorations that together communicate a message. According to the American Civil Liberties Union, freedom of expression protects not only speech in the traditional sense, but also symbolic and artistic expression. In other words, creative work is just as much an expression of personal belief as writing or speaking. This principle has been upheld by the US Supreme Court in several cases relating to compelled speech. For example, in Willie v. Maynard, 1977, the court ruled that a citizen could not be forced to display a state motto on their license plate if it violated their convictions. More recently, in 303 Creative LLC v. Ellenus, 2023, the court reaffirmed that the government cannot compel individuals or businesses to create expressive content that goes against their beliefs. These precedents demonstrate that expression extends beyond spoken words. It includes art, design, and even services provided by creative professionals. Cathy Miller's cakes, especially her custom wedding cakes, clearly fall into this category of expressive works. Forcing her to design a cake that celebrates something she cannot in good conscience support is no different from forcing an artist to paint a mural with a message they oppose. Legal scholars have argued that compelling artistic services amounts to forcing someone to endorse a message, which violates the very heart of free speech protections. In short, freedom of expression means Cathy cannot be forced to use her talents to deliver a message she does not support. So, Chairperson, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, if Cathy Miller is denied the freedom to choose who she serves, she is also denied her freedom of religion, her freedom of choice, and her freedom of expression. And that is why the motion that Cathy Miller should be able to choose who she serves is undoubtedly true. Thank you.
I now call upon the first native speaker, Akshwali.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for us tonight is Cathy Miller, the baker, should be able to choose who she serves. We, the negative team, strongly disagree with this statement. Our definition is that we agree given by the affirmative team. The first speaker has argued private property allows refusal. Legal Information Institute explains that civil rights law regulates public-facing businesses to prevent harm. Ownership does not grant the right to discriminate. Public comments requires equal service to protect marginalized groups. Personal belief can remain private, but property rights cannot override equal obligations. Compliance ensures both property and dignity are respected, balancing autonomy with societal fairness. The first speaker has also mentioned about if Cathy can be forced other artists. Has argued about artistic consolation. Public accommodation laws make clear that creating goods for sale commerce, not compelled speech. A New Mexican photography case ruled that selling services publicly does not equal endorsing beliefs, ensures access. Artists remain free to reject private projects, but once open to the public, they must treat all customers equally and under anti-discrimination law. The first speaker also argued that alternatives exist. However, Human Rights Campaign explains that requiring someone to go somewhere else ignores the harm of exclusion itself. Denying service constitutes discrimination regardless of market options. Legal obligation ensure marginalized groups can access public goods without additional burden. Access must be equal, not contingent on finding a subtle. Public commerce cannot shift the responsibility onto customer to find alternatives. The first speaker also argued that the wedding cake are art. However, the American Civil Liberty Union explains that businesses for offering goods for the public can be regulated even if their work is creative. Artistic freedom is fully protected in private, but selling cakes publicly require compliance and anti-discrimination law. Owners cannot refuse service based on customer identity, ensuring fair access while maintaining private creative rights. Today, as first speaker, I'll be talking to you about the power of legal principles and why discrimination laws must be upheld. Our second speaker will prove that Cathy's selective refusal targets the pride community and risking normalization discrimination in public spaces. And our third speaker will rebut and sum up our team's case. My first point is that businesses open to the public must serve the public fairly, equally, and without exception. The California Court to Appeal recently ruled that Cathy Miller unlawfully refused to sell a plain white wedding cake to the same-sex couple. Her actions violated the UNRRA Civil Rights Act, which guarantees full and equal accommodations in all business establishments regardless of sexual orientation. This isn't just about a cake, it's about a principle. Anti-discrimination laws are not optional. They exist to protect people from prejudice in everyday life, in shops, schools, hospitals, and homes. California's protections are amongst the strongest in the world, as they especially prohibit discrimination in public accommodation based on sexual orientation and gender identity. The California Civil Rights Department stated, "No one should be denied simply because of who they are or who they love." That principle must be universal, not just local. Anti-discrimination laws were written to protect people from unfair treatment, not to be twisted or avoided when inconvenient. My second argument refers to responsibilities of business owners, who, by opening a business, take on a public role beyond their private individual. Cathy Miller is free to hold her personal beliefs in her private life, but once she opened the bakery doors to the community, she took on that responsibility of serving that community. A 2024 survey conducted by NORC Williams Institute revealed that 74% of voters believe that right to be served by businesses, regardless of face, religion, disability, or sexual orientation, is more important than the right of business owners to refuse service based on consequence or religious beliefs. Businesses exist to provide goods and services, not to judge their customers. If every business owner picked and chose who was acceptable to serve, the marketplace would stop being fair and reliable. Customers would constantly be at risk of humiliation and exclusion of them just being themselves. Running a business is a choice. But if you make that choice, you must accept the responsibility that comes with it, to serve all members of the public equally. Hence, business owners should operate under the public law, not personal morality. Personal beliefs do not override legal duties in commercial setting. A bakery sells baked goods, not approval of Cathy Miller's. And Cathy Miller's job was to serve, not to discriminate. So, Madam Chairman, adjudicators, and audience, to conclude, Cathy Miller's refusal to serve a same-sex couple is not the matter of personal belief. It is a breach of public responsibility and a violation of anti-discrimination laws. These laws exist to protect fairness, dignity, and equal access for all. Cathy Miller made her decision to open to the public, and that decision implies a responsibility to provide unbiased service. Homosexuality is lawful in California, and Miss Miller's personal beliefs are lawful in California. But when those beliefs are foisted upon others, it becomes illegal discrimination. Thank you so much.
upon the second affirmative speaker, Keziah Chang.
Good evening. Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for tonight's debate is that Cathy Miller, or Cathy the Baker, should be able to choose who she serves. We, the Affirmative team, firmly believe that this statement is undoubtedly true. I'll now rebut the flaws in the opposition's case. The negative team have tried to argue that Cathy Miller should not be able to choose who she serves because of anti-discrimination laws, such as the UNRWA Civil Rights Law, as your first negative speaker has pointed out. Whilst it is true that such laws exist, Cathy has wrongly been claimed of having disobeyed them. According to a 2025 article by 23 ABC News Bakerfield, Cathy Miller stated, "We serve everyone at the bakery. We have several customers who are part of the LGBT community," determining that Cathy doesn't discriminate against individuals. She simply does not feel right being a part of events that go against her faith. This distinction is essential. It shows that Cathy isn't disobeying the anti-discrimination rule as already determined by her 2022 Superior Court ruling where she won. She is simply upholding her First Amendment rights, as mentioned by our first speaker, and religious freedom. This is why Cathy Miller should be able to choose who she serves. The negative team have tried to argue that Cathy Miller should not be able to choose who she serves because of the responsibility that comes with opening a business. While having responsibilities as a business owner is true, opening a business does not mean you must surrender your constitutional rights. According to the U.S. Supreme Court, those protected by the First Amendment, such as artists and business owners, may be exempted from serving customers when it comes to endorsing messages they don't support. Saying that whoever opens a business loses these rights is horribly dangerous. This is why Cathy Miller should be able to choose who she serves. Our first speaker has already flawlessly proclaimed that how Cathy Miller should be able to choose who she serves because she has a right to express her own religion, a right to make her own choices, and a right to express her beliefs. Now, to my points. I'll be arguing two tonight. My first point is that Cathy Miller should be able to choose who she serves because her intent is not to harm customers and she's simply exercising her own rights to uphold her religious faith. According to a court document by the California Civil Rights Department, Cathy believes that her bakery, Tastries, is God's business, saying that her mission statement is to honor God in all that they do. The document goes on to state that she expresses this by playing Christian hymns in the bakery and including Bible verses on business cards. News journalist Maria Manzos also elaborates on how Cathy Miller states that her bakery is her way of answering a call from God to serve others with joy and compassion, ensuring her faith is reflected within her work and relationships with customers. This matters legally, as following the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, governments are prohibited from forcing artists, including bakers, from creating expressive content that goes against their beliefs, according to the U.S. Congress. Cathy's bakery is not just a commercial service, but an extension of her personal beliefs, and dare I say, her identity. It's reasonable for her to choose who she serves to remain faithful to her beliefs and to herself. Moreover, Cathy declined to design a same-sex wedding cake due to her deeply held religious beliefs. According to the Supreme Court transcript, she emphasized that participating in a same-sex wedding would violate her faith. But, to minimize harm, she even offered to refer the couple to another nearby bakery. Her actions were fueled by care and duty to her beliefs, not animosity or hatred towards the same-sex couple, let alone the entire LGBTQ+ community. As journalist Liz Likens reported, Miller sought to protect her right to live out her faith without government coercion. Her decision stemmed from religious conviction, not prejudice, and thus is protected under the First Amendment, proving why Cathy Miller should be able to choose who she serves. My second point is that Cathy Miller should be able to choose who she serves because she should not be the exception where other businesses or people with religious affiliations have been able to choose who they serve. According to news journalist Julia Donheiser, an investigation that took place in the United States found that American private schools are legally permitted to accept or refuse students based on no clear justification whatsoever. Meanwhile, Cathy Miller can't have the right to choose who she serves in her own bakery with a legitimate and clear reason, upholding her religious faith. The double standard is not just inconsistent, it's horribly unjust. Moreover, the Human Rights Law Review writes that many U.S. courts have ruled that artistic expression includes the right to not create certain works that go against one's beliefs, including Laurie Smith, a website designer in Colorado who refused to partake in creating wedding websites for same-sex couples. If it has been legally recognized that artists should not be forced to create art that goes against their views, why would it be right to coerce Cathy into creating cakes for a cause that goes against her beliefs? This is why Cathy should be able to choose who she serves. So, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, Cathy Miller wasn't acting out of hate, but out of faith. If others can choose who they serve based on their beliefs or preferences, why can't she? Everyone's rights should be defended, including Cathy Miller's. This is why Cathy Miller should be able to choose who she serves. Thank you.
I now call upon the second negative speaker, Deep Shah.
Good evening. Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for our debate is that Cathy Miller should be able to choose who she serves. We, the negative team, believe that this statement is undeniably false. The second speaker has argued that expressive businesses are exempt. However, American Civil Liberties Union explains that anti-discrimination law applies regardless of size when businesses serve the public. Artistic expression in private is protected, but commerce must ensure fairness. Exemption would allow selective service and harm marginalized groups. Public-facing businesses must comply with civil rights law, balancing creativity with ethical obligations, ensuring access and dignity for all customers. The second speaker has also claimed that Cathy's faith protects her refusal. However, the California Court of Appeal ruled that she violated the Unruh Civil Rights Act, which guarantees equal service regardless of sexual orientation. Religious belief is protected privately, but public-facing businesses cannot discriminate. Allowing refusal would let personal conscience override legal obligations, undermining fairness, dignity, and equal access in commerce, which laws are specifically designed to protect. Our first negative speaker has clearly shown that businesses open to the public must serve everyone fairly and equally, highlighting how Cathy Miller unlawfully refused to sell a wedding cake to a same-sex couple, violating California's Unruh Civil Rights Act. He emphasized that this is not just about a cake, but about upholding fairness, equality, and dignity in everyday life, and that anti-discrimination laws exist to protect people from prejudice in public spaces. He also explained that by opening a business, Cathy Miller took on a public responsibility. Her personal beliefs cannot override her duty to serve all members of the community equally. This establishes the foundation that, as allowing her to choose who she serves undermines both legal protection and basic expectations of public service. Today, I'll be discussing two compelling arguments that firmly show why Cathy Miller should not be allowed to choose who she serves. Firstly, the serious societal risks her actions can create by setting a menacing precedent, and secondly, the clear hypocrisy in her selective refusal. First and foremost, condoning Cathy Miller's refusal to serve a same-sex couple sets a dangerous precedent. Allowing one business to deny service based on personal beliefs opens the door for any public-facing business to justify discrimination against people based on race, religion, gender, sexuality, or disability. History shows the dangers of tolerated discrimination, as prior to the civil rights movement in the United States, Black Americans were routinely refused service in restaurants, hotels, and other public spaces. As civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. famously said, "Injustice everywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." Cathy Miller's actions risk normalizing prejudice, weakening trust in public spaces, and undermining social cohesion. The couple she refused described their experience as devastating, feeling humiliated and rejected on what would have been one of the happiest days of their lives. As demographic trend analyst Mark McCrindle says, allowing her to continue this injustice would let her to reinforce a world where vulnerable groups remain marginalized. Cathy Miller should not be able to choose who she serves, because doing so will threaten fairness, inclusivity, and societal trust. This undermines decades of progress toward equality and sends the message that prejudice is unacceptable. Allowing a single baker to decide who is worthy of service will validate discrimination and risk encouraging similar prejudice practices in the future throughout society. My second point is how Cathy Miller's selective morality exposes blatant hypocrisy. She claims she cannot bake a cake for same-sex couples because it would hurt her Lord and Saviour, as she quotes. Yet she serves divorced couples, people who commit adultery, and others whose lifestyles also conflict with her religious beliefs. A 2023 Pew Research Center found that 70% of Christian Americans believe religious beliefs should not justify denying services in the Pride community, highlighting that a selective enforcement is viewed as unfair by the wider community. This selective enforcement shows her refusal is targeted discrimination and not a consistent moral stance. As the famous saying goes, you can't have your cake and eat it too. She cannot claim to defend her faith while ignoring other parts of it. Leviticus 19:19 forbids wearing clothes made from mixed fabrics, something Cathy clearly does, highlighting the outdated and selective nature of her interpretation. Even the Catholic Church, after Pope Francis' statement, now blesses same-sex couples, showing how modern religious practices can embrace inclusivity. In essence, Cathy Miller should not be able to choose whom she serves, because claiming moral conviction while acting inconsistently undermines the credibility of her beliefs, enables unfair and targeted discrimination. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, if there is one truth I would like to leave with you today, it is this: when fairness is compromised, when personal beliefs are used to justify hypocrisy, and when the foundation of public trust is weakened, we are not dealing with a simple business dispute. We are witnessing the dangers of allowing discrimination to go unchecked. Cathy Miller is not simply baking goods, she is making a choice that threatens equality, inclusivity, and societal cohesion. The choice is clear for this circumstance: either we uphold equality or we surrender to prejudice. The choice is obvious. Thank you very much.
I call upon the third affirmative speaker, Paige Hall.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for today's debate is that Cathy Miller, also known as Cathy the Baker, should be able to choose who she serves. We, the affirmative team, firmly believe that this statement is true. The negative team have tried to tell you that Cathy should not be able to choose who she serves because of anti-discrimination laws. But But if what Cathy did was against the law, how could she win the case against the Supreme Court? In the court battle, the key to the ruling was a distinction between participation in a specific ceremony versus general denial of service. The judge's reasoning was that if the Unruh Act, California's Civil Rights Act, were applied, it would override her free speech and free exercise rights, as stated in the First Amendment of the United States Constitutional Bill of Rights. Since the cake order was a custom cake and not one off the shelf, the court that went in Miller's favour, said she had the right to refuse to express her support for same-sex marriage in that way, and could respect non-discrimination law by referring the couple to another bakery, as she did. Similarly, religious affiliated organisations like private faith-based schools are legally allowed to make decisions based on religious beliefs, which shows that the US law already recognises the right of religious institutions, and by extension, religious individuals in business, to act according to their faith in choosing whom they serve. The First Amendment of the United States Constitutional Bill of Rights protects this freedom. The negative team have tried to tell you that denying service is discrimination. As our second speaker has already explained, Cathy believes that her bakery, Tasteries, is God's business. Her bakery's mission statement is to honour God in all that we do, and her Baptist faith influences everything, from the Bible verses that she puts on her business cards to the music she plays in the shop. Cathy's decision not to create a custom cake for a same-sex wedding is an expression of both her religious beliefs and artistic expression, which the US Supreme Court recognised as protected under the First Amendment in 303 Creative LLC versus Elinas. Cathy the Baker should be able to choose who she serves because her actions are in line with the First Amendment in the US Constitution. In simple terms, the First Amendment states that a person should be able to freely exercise their religion and their freedom of speech. The negative team have tried to tell you that Cathy Miller should not be able to choose who she serves because as a business owner, she should serve everyone. However, Miller's current attorney, Adele Keem from Beckett, explained to CBM that people that live by Christian values, like Cathy, set these design standards and values for their faith. Cathy Miller has lived by these principles, avoiding not just same-sex wedding cakes, but also requests for legal marijuana-infused creations, grotesque Halloween cakes, and adult-themed products, and also cakes to celebrate divorces. The negative team have also tried to tell you that Cathy Miller should not be able to choose who she serves because there should be equal access to goods and services for everyone, especially when you open up a business. And while we agree in principle that access to goods and services is important, Cathy did not deny that couple altogether. She simply declined to create a custom wedding cake that conflicted with her religious beliefs. Cathy did not restrict this couple's access to goods and services. Cathy did refuse them access to her goods and services, but she also recommended another baker for them to go to. This shows that her decision was not based on who the customers were, but on what they were asking her to express through her art. That distinction matters, and the US courts have recognised it. Cathy's choice wasn't discrimination. It was an exercise of her First Amendment rights, and respecting her right to act according to her faith, while still ensuring the couple had alternatives, is a fair and constitutional balance. The negative team have tried to tell you that by denying service to the lesbian couple, Cathy set a homophobic precedent. However, this is false because she simply said she can't serve them because of her personal religious convictions. She even recommended a good baker for them to go to as an alternative, as I've already stated. Cathy does not act out of hatred or intolerance. She treats all her customers, including the couple, respectfully, explaining her beliefs. That's not divisive. That's respectful disagreement in a diverse society. True inclusion means making space for different beliefs, not silencing or punishing those who think differently. Cathy won't make a custom cake featuring marijuana or graphic images to maintain those beliefs, much like a restaurant that won't serve vegan food, since it undermines the integrity of their craft. You wouldn't ask Michelangelo to paint a Buddhist mural, so why would you ask a Christian baker to create art that goes against her beliefs? This is why Cathy should absolutely be able to choose who she serves. Our first speaker spoke to you about how Cathy has the freedom of religion, as well as the freedom of choice. She has the freedom to make decisions based on her religious choices and, in this case, She has the freedom to choose not to serve certain people if it goes against her religious beliefs. Cathy also has the freedom to make her own choices, especially for her own business. Our second speaker, Keziah, explained that Cathy's intent was not to harm the couple. She spoke about how Cathy was not aggressive in her refusal and instead informed them of her religious beliefs and recommended another baker for them to go to instead. Keziah also spoke about how Cathy shouldn't be the exception when other businesses with religious affiliations are able to choose who they serve. So, Madam Chairman, in conclusion, our team believes that Cathy Miller should be able to choose who she serves at her own bakery. She has both the freedom of choice and the freedom of religion. Thank you.
I call upon the third native speaker, Tanjim Hussain.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. The topic before us is that Cathy Miller, also known as Cathy the Baker, should be able to choose who she serves. We, the negative team, believe this statement as undoubtedly false. The first speaker has argued that property ownership allows refusal. While owners have rights, public-facing businesses cannot discriminate. It's like claiming that because someone owns a bus for public transport, they can deny tickets to certain passengers. Property does not override public obligations. Civil rights laws ensures fair access, preventing harm to marginalized groups. Private belief can remain intact, but commerce serving the public must follow equality standards. Assuming property rights justify selective exclusion misrepresents cause and effect. Legal compliance balances private liberty with societal equity. Owners can retain control over personal property in private contexts while treating all customers fairly in public-facing operations. Public commerce obligations protect dignity, trust, and cohesion, demonstrating that civil rights apply without infringing private liberty. The first speaker has also argued that alternatives exist, so refusal is harmless. This reasoning oversimplifies the issue. It's like denying a student access to one classroom because other classrooms exist. The exclusion itself still harms the student. Public-facing businesses have obligations under anti-discrimination law to provide equal access regardless of market alternatives. Access is not conditional on customers finding substitutes. Owners may retain private conscience, but selective denial in commerce communicates rejection and inequity. The harm of exclusion is real and tangible, and assuming alternatives eliminated misrepresents cause and effect. Upholding these obligations ensures marginalized communities can access services with dignity, showing that convenience for business cannot justify discriminatory conduct. The first speaker has also argued that compelling Cathy to create a wedding cake sets a precedent for forcing artists to produce work they disagree with. This reasoning oversimplifies legal reality. In Elaine Photography versus Willock in 2013, a New Mexico photographer refused to shoot a same-sex commitment ceremony, claiming religious objection. The court ruled that public-facing services must comply with anti-discrimination law while private creative freedom remains protected. The key distinction is that commerce is regulated to prevent harm, not to force personal beliefs. It's like asking a painter to sell a portrait. Serving the public does not require endorsing the subject, only providing equitable access. Public-facing artists retain freedom privately, but cannot exclude based on identity. This ensures fairness, protects marginalized communities, and preserves private artistic liberty. The second affirmative speaker has argued that expressive creative businesses should be exempt. This misrepresents legal principles. Anti-discrimination law applies regardless of business size when services are public-facing. It's like saying a small classroom doesn't have to follow safety rules. Access and protection standards apply universally. Artistic expression in private is fully protected, but commerce must remain fair. Exemption would allow arbitrary exclusion, harming marginalized groups. Owners may maintain private conscience while public service complies with the law. Assuming that small size exempts businesses is a flawed analogy and exaggerates cause and effect. Legal obligations protect fairness, dignity, and inclusion. Compliance ensures that all customers are treated equitably while leaving private creative freedom untouched. Balancing ethical responsibility with personal liberty preserves both societal cohesion and artistic integrity. The second affirmative speaker has also claimed that Cathy's faith protects her refusal. However, the California Court of Appeal ruled she violated the Unruh Civil Rights Act, which guarantees equal service regardless of sexual orientation. Religious belief is protected privately, but public-facing businesses cannot discriminate. Allowing refusal would let personal conscience override legal obligations, undermining fairness, dignity, and equal access in commerce, which laws are specifically designed to protect. Cathy also experienced a court loss in the California Court of Appeals in 2025, ruling that her bakery's policy was facially discriminatory. The third speaker of the affirmative team has claimed constitutional rights automatically shield refusal. Free speech and religious liberty protect private belief, not public commerce. It's like writing a private diary versus running a public shop. The former is fully protected. The latter is regulated to prevent harm. Assuming the First Amendment allows denial of services misapplies the law. Public-facing businesses must comply with anti-discrimination statutes to protect marginalized individuals, ensuring equitable access while private belief remains intact. Legal obligations regulate behavior, not conscience. Ignoring this distinction is a logical overreach. Balancing private liberty with public duty ensures equality without attacking faith. Public commerce exists to serve society inclusively, meaning constitutional protections of private expression do not grant exemption from obligations to all customers. The third affirmative speaker has also argued that refusal is broader than weddings. While some refusals may be legal, such as illegal or unsafe products, identity-based denial remains unlawful. Cathy has specifically been discriminatory, and anti-discrimination law ensures fair treatment regardless of the product being requested. Owners retain private discretion to refuse illegal or unsafe work but cannot use personal belief to target protected groups. Assuming broader refusal justifies discrimination misrepresents the distinction between legality and personal conscience. Compliance protects marginalized communities and ensures equitable access and balances private choice with public obligations. Public commerce rules selective harm while preserving lawful discretion, showing that selective service based on identity is never justified, regardless of other legitimate refusals. Our first speaker said that businesses open to the public, like Cathy Miller's Bakery, must serve to everyone.